right, we got a morphologist video next, and this one is titled Star Citizen Wants Playability and Content in 2025. I think they also wanted that in 2024, and I think they also wanted that in 2023. I can't remember the exact words from the letters from the chairman, but it was pretty
Blame Mike.
Pretty much the same, right? Where it was blame me, yeah, it must be my fault. Pretty much the same comments of quality of life and so on. So let's see what Morph has to say about this. I'm pretty interested. We're trying to figure out what to do in this game and what this game is going to be right now, right? And it's hard in 4.0 for them to show it, because I think 4.0 is a bit of the, like, this patch was always going to be a mess, and I really look forward to seeing if they're able to actually stabilize this stuff. Let's see.
With the arrival of Alpha 4.0 and server meshing, one of the most significant milestones in Star Citizen development history has finally gone to live. Well, sort of, though it may have taken a bit longer than many of us, including Chris Roberts, probably anticipated. So then, what's next in 2025? Well, the letter from the chairman alongside the latest patch for the game 4.0.1 gives us a little bit of a glimpse where Chris outlined plans to decouple features from content, allowing for more frequent content updates, alongside a renewed focus on playability. Well, he didn't go into any specifics.
Why do Morph's videos always feel like a step above everyone else's? Because they are. Morph uses his own footage, and it looks like CIG footage. It's literally because they are.
I saw this as an opportunity to gather some feedback from the community, that's you guys, to see what playability means to you. And I also got a good idea of what you want to see for new content and features along the way. So let's jump into this interactive style content, and if you along the way like this kind of video, please let me know by hitting that like and subscribe button to show your support. Just as I hope you'll stick around to hear about the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. I know you guys have already heard about them from tons of other creators like me, but I really have used them for years before I even got sponsored, which is why I was really happy to work with them. I got sick of using shady free VPNs, which I knew I couldn't trust with my info, just so I could get access to websites.
Guys, what show are we going to watch from Taiwan today?
Sites that I needed to for work while I'm abroad in Taiwan. So now with Nord, I can do my job and even watch shows that aren't available here in Taiwan as a bonus, like Stargate SG-1, an absolute sci-fi classic. So if you're looking for a reliable VPN service and you want to support my channel along the way, you can head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist to get a huge discount on the 2-year plan, plus get 4 additional months for free. That's nordvpn.com/morphologist, and if none of it really works for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. To better understand Chris Roberts' discussion on separating content and features and focusing...
This will be a good discussion at part, because the difference between content and features, I still don't entirely understand, and I don't think many of the community members are going to either until we actually see them put it into practice.
On playability, let's break it down. There's a lot of nuance in these terms, and interpretations are going to vary depending on your background, but Chris has a very specific meaning here with the way he said it. He's emphasizing the delivery of more activities with the existing game framework. In more technical terms, tech features or technology developed for Star Citizen has the potential to create additional content by leveraging the existing structures. For example, server meshing is a tech feature that enables CIG to continually expand the gameplay space, provided that they have enough server capacity. This could mean even
also make the AI hopefully work better, right? And if the AI work better, they can maybe do more interesting experiences and things like that. Like, have you felt like we currently have not felt the experience of a low level mission with an Aurora pilot that is unskilled, and a, let's say, medium level mission with an Aurora pilot that is skilled? I don't think that's the best example. Maybe we can go with like Arrow or Gladius, something that's more combat focused. But if you were to use the example of an AI that is really strong versus an AI that's not really strong, and it isn't a like dialed up number where they do more damage or they have more health, which is essentially what they do now by making the ships just bigger as you go down the line in bounties. Like bountying a caterpillar being the most difficult mission is nonsensical in some ways. It can make sense, but at the same time, it's should be like the grades of bounty missions are their difficulty, right? But the difficulty of the enemy currently is not realized in a way that is tangible by the player base.
Even adding a new star system like Pyro or Stanton using the existing 4.0 framework, so think Nyx. Regarding features, these refer to new activities that require additional technology, introducing new code into Star Citizen. This can lead to things like bugs that disrupt gameplay. So by isolating these new features in a separate build, CIG aims to address these issues before introducing them into the persistent universe where players progress and earn ships.
What we refuse to point out is the fact that no matter what, there comes a point where they need to test at scale. 4.0 it is literally just a PTU. That's what it is. It's a PTU that they threw live on or preview or whatever to get you to download it so they can get the data they needed at scale. They are being a little sly and sneaky there because they're not getting enough in the PTU because they ruin the PTU experience by pushing it out way too early, right? So the PTU experience comes out in Evo Kati, everyone can show it. Then it comes out to PTU, and this process is like 2 to 3 months long sometimes. And it's like, everyone's already seen it. Nobody's excited about the content anymore. No one's excited to jump in. Where I really believe that the experience needs to be much stronger and much more solid when we get to Evo Kati than what it is now. I just can't imagine how many times I've joined a PTU and it just crashes instantly and nobody can leave a hangar. You can do that. You can do that internally. You can find out that issue internally. You do not need us to find that, right? And if you just release that patch during the actual workday, your QA members can deal with that, and it could be found out. But no, it's pushed to us at like 7 p.m. Eastern. There's nobody from the EU that's able to be online, so the scale is never there ever because of when you push it out, and there's never enough people on all in one chunk, and it's just goofy and dumb. So the idea of separating content and features and having a separate test build for these things, you're never going to be able to test them at scale because you're not going to have your player base interested enough in testing. We have continuously shown that once everyone joins the PTU to check out the features, not as many people join to actually test bugs and make issue council reports.
This approach means patches may introduce new content while leaving features in a separate build until they're ready to go. Playability, on the other hand, is subjective and challenging to define. Well, we can be pretty certain it includes things like bug fixing and performance optimization, especially based on their intentions to isolate new features into separate builds from the live environment. It may also involve polishing and reworking existing features for ease of use. We've seen a little bit of that in 4.0.1, where they've gone and changed a couple of old ships like the Nomad, giving it a personal inventory, and doing the same for the Mantis.
Where's the Nomad personal inventory? And where's the Mantis? I can't find them. I was never able to find the personal inventories on those ships.
So the door is really open to define it, and that is where you guys come in. I asked you guys to sound off in my community section here on my YouTube channel to let me know what you guys were thinking about what Chris
No one could find them? Yeah, because they don't exist.
said, and he had a lot of different ideas, so let me try to summarize it here. To absolutely nobody's surprise, the most consistent request from the community is to fix the game. The difficult part of giving feedback on this, though, is that Star Citizen's issues aren't just limited to simple issues with code or poor performance. There are broken missions and missions.
How do you fix the game, though? Like, what's going to happen when you fix this game? That's my issue with this idea, is what happens when you fix this game is you realize how boring it is. You realize where it has nothing. What is there to fix? Right? That's kind of a problem.
Mission sharing, outposts with holes in them that let you fall through the ground, desyncing, dysfunctional elevators and transit systems, numerous AI behavior issues, issues with ships like missing geometry or broken functionality. The list could fill a video by itself.
It could.
There's also just...
And it's like, maybe they mean like fix the most blatantly obvious things? Right? Like falling through a planet like Morph mentions. Like, yeah, that should be a thing that's fixed, right? But I hope they don't mean a bug-free experience.
Just an enormous backlog of problems that have built up over the years and have become so normalized by players that they're just part of the scenery. And you don't notice them until a new player comes along and says, hey, why is this weird thing this way? So then, at an absolute minimum, reducing issues with features and content that are frequently touched by players would go a long way to improving playability. A good start would be to look at fixing what players typically interact with each session, like issues with elevators, shop kiosks, ATC terminals, requesting takeoff, ship flight issues.
Oh my god, all of those are transit, right? Which is the reason we called for 4.0 to not go live without it. I called that out as the single stupidest decision they made, and we're all suffering for it now.
Followed by various popular missions and loops like mining, salvage, bounty hunting, mercenary missions, and so forth.
Can I link the video?
What it comes down to
is
that it's just not fun to spend hours on an activity only for the reward to be a game-breaking issue that ends the session short. This is exactly the kind of experience that turns what would have been a long-term fan and backer into somebody who couldn't care less about the game. I'm sure some longtime players of the game will be able to share countless examples of this, even from the past couple of days. I know I sure can. If by the end of 2025 this goes from a regular occurrence to a rare one, then that would be a significant achievement. Good news is that right at the start of this year, CIG pretty much confirmed that this is going to be their focus with the release of 4.0.1.
This is their intention. This is their intention. What will be this year? I am so curious. And I am so jaded and I am so glass half empty about these people. I more think about, like, how are they going to screw this up? How are they going to find the dumbest way to screw this up is how I feel. Like, I really, really hope these people realize how good of a thing they have. I really hope they realize how good of it. They managed to make $100 million last year on one of the worst possible scenarios for their studio. They delivered almost nothing of what people expected them to deliver in that year until the very, very end. But they still managed to almost keep pace with the previous year's funding, which was very strong because the hype levels were really high, right? And that is incredible that they're able, from a funding standpoint, to keep people paying for this, and at the same point that they have so much potential to deliver a really, really cool experience in the game and just refuse to prioritize it. Just refuse to prioritize it.
In the first PTU of the year that has over 100 bug fixes in it, not to mention a slew of quality of life improvements. That's only the
Did we actually test those bugs though, Morph? Because I would say 40% of them were not fixed.
first week since they've been back. A couple more weeks of stuff like this and they'll be well on their way to making 4.0 a far more reliably playable experience. However, as many have pointed out in the community, like Veptis, Stumafu, and Refi, there's a lot of improvements to make outside of just bug fixing. Simple functionality and UI surrounding inventories and looting, for example, is an easy point for CIG to improve. As many have requested before, inventories need search functionality and better, more responsive sorting functions. Further, looting and
I mean, straight up clicking the item over to your backpack needs to be instant, and it just isn't.
And the equip logic needs streamlining. For example, it's not clearly communicated that a backpack cannot be equipped without a chest piece, and it can feel frustrating when an item can't be looted due to having an attachment to another item. This is something that a lot of new players have reportedly struggled with when looking at my new player guide comments in my recently released guide for 4.0. And if one new feature has shown how weak the inventory system actually is in the game, it's got to be the contested zones. It's been a constant struggle to try to use fuses to put them in doors and to retrieve them from walls, to take out key cards and place them in the door easily without having to fumble through your inventory.
So if you guys like focused on the PTU, you would have seen an attempt to fix this. And if you weren't paying close attention, you wouldn't know. And I don't blame Morph for not knowing. I'm not trying to put him down here or anything like that. That's not my intention with this at all. But in the last couple PTUs before it went live, I want to see if anybody in chat is aware of this. Did you see the feature they tried to put in, which was a massive quality of life improvement? And we still have not seen it yet, and I'm surprised we do not see it in 4.0.1. Does anybody know? I'm going to give you just a few seconds here before I say it, because I don't want to just sit in silence. 3, spawning and hangar. It is a quality of life thing, but no. No, it's specifically to what Morph is talking about right now. So for anybody who does not know, you were able to interact with a door, a fuse door, any key. I think even if you were going to go hack your crime stat away, if the item was in your inventory, so in your backpack, in your chest, in your legs, it would automatically remove that item and use it. So you would come up to a door and it would say no valid item, something like that. If you saw that error, it would say no valid item on the door. That was their attempt to do direct from backpack, direct from inventory item usage. So that was an intended feature they tried to make work. But because they rushed it out to say that they released 4.0 in 2024, we did not get that feature. So as cool of a thing as that sounds, remember why you don't have it. Remember why you don't have it.
In the meanwhile, getting shot at by players and NPCs. It just creates so much friction in an otherwise enjoyable loop that it detrimentally affects the experience. Traveling, too, could be made easier with clearer UI markers and better descriptions for locations with their respective resources and amenities. This also means completing work on the mapping system and enabling functionality of waypoints in all locations for better overall navigation. Quantum jumping, too, could be improved and streamlined. Think more intuitive.
I mean, how many times have you failed trying to quantum jump, have to move away, come back, and go again? Nearly every time.
Jump splines that don't require multiple short jumps to get from A to B. But maybe one of the more obvious touch points to address is one pointed out by Conrad Larson and many others, and that's to improve Star Citizen's spaceships. Many of them have fallen further and further behind in functionality with designs that no longer work well with gameplay systems. It's a classic issue with Star Citizen that ships are often introduced and then sold before the features that they advertise to enable are actually in the game, which predictably always creates problems later on. CIG could make huge strides in playability by bringing the worst offending ones up to speed, by bringing them up to gold standard and making design adjustments to better suit the new systems that they've developed. A small
Why does it take so long to do that? Is like I have a hard time saying just do it, like what I'm hearing here from like his commenter and himself. I more struggle with the what takes so long, why isn't it prioritized? And they have the numbers, we don't. I'm very curious what it would be like if they gold standard a cutlass and maybe did some updates to it. Gold standard a Connie and maybe did some updates to it. Like Mark IIing ships, but not the way that they did the Mark IIs in the previous, right? I think there is, but not Mark IIing them, just updating them. Would you make money off of people that don't have those ships anymore because they got rid of them or whatever, or never got them in the first place because they weren't good. And like let's use the Connie for example. A lot of people still use the Connie because it is good, but it is ugly. Would they make money off of that ship? I think it has a shitty like internals. So I doubt it, which is why they don't do it, because their only focus is about money.
Example would be the Freelancer's midsection cargo bay, which can't be accessed due to the doors being too small to fit even a 1 SU box through. However, it still has an SU grid in there, and that's far from the worst offender. Ships like the Aurora and Mustang, which are starter ships for 2 players, lack accessible inventories, weapon racks, usable cargo grids, and accessible components. The result is a frustrating experience.
Yeah, I mean, these ships don't even fit in Star Citizen anymore. They're essentially just shuttles.
Especially for new players when trying to engage with entry-level gameplay loops that these ships are currently just ill-suited to enable. Luckily, it looks like CIG are already on this one with the latest patch in the PTU. They adjusted the Aurora's cargo rack to make cargo just a bit more accessible beneath, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And since we're on the subject of starters, injecting my own opinion here, I feel like the design philosophy behind starter ships needs to be reconsidered just a little bit. Shifting to better all-arounders as opposed to going...
Dude, the Intrepid was the best idea for a starter ship until they put the single gun on it. It had a great... It set, for me, the gold standard of a starter ship, but did not deliver because they decided to make it a gimmick. Oh, they screwed up so bad on that. Who remembers the pre-Star Atlas positive Morphologist Mark I thing shortchange? I'm putting that comment, I'm saying it out loud so maybe you can hear the words that you just typed, and everyone, I'm putting it out there so everyone can hear it and see what the reaction to your comment is. Because it's so disingenuous and so sad, in my opinion, to say something like that. It has nothing to do with Star Atlas, dude. It has everything to do with seeing the light of how dark this game actually is and how lacking in progress it's made since he started following it.
The specialized route as CIG seems to have been doing recently. New players can't be expected to know which loop they're going to find more interesting when they're first starting, so it makes more sense to give them a fair chance at participating at as much as possible before deciding on what to buy in-game or on the website next. So this would mean identifying current starter ship weaknesses and addressing them to make their abilities a bit more balanced with each other, with only slight differences in favor of identity and flavor. And since we're talking about buying internet spaceships, some players like Advo Archist want to see the game look more obtainable and less intimidating to new players, referencing the FOMO tactics that are often used by the marketing team, and the high ship prices being something that can turn some players.
I literally stopped PvPing because I cannot get an F7A Mark II. Right? I was actively training. I was using a Buccaneer and doing the like boom and zoom mechanics, and then the F7A came out and I just died instantly every time and was like, all right.
Players away. This one's a bit more difficult to address though, as Star Citizen depends on the success of ship sales in order to continue development. One way to address it then would be to ensure Ship Balance offers a choice as opposed to outright advantages for newer, more expensive ships, which they already do to some extent, but it's sadly offset by the fact that a lot of older ships are just really outdated, making them better suited to playing the game that we have today. So fixing this would make the game feel a bit more balanced and make some of the older ships not feel so inferior to new ships. But what about Star Citizen's performance? Well, players like Vlanchov and countless others are increasingly calling for optimization and enhanced performance in the game. And this is just a natural progression of the gaming industry, as screens that go above 60 FPS are becoming more and more affordable to a wider audience. People are starting to notice the difference between low frame rate and high frame rate games. That's why we're starting to see a lot of performance enhancing features like...
I mean, the thing that I need them to fix is these gears don't touch each other, and it's driven me nuts for literally years. Can we please fix that? Can we point that out in a Morphologist video so it gets fixed, please?
DLSS and FSR becoming standard in pretty much every new game. And although CIG did introduce some of these features last year, Star Citizen still lacks the support for their latest versions. But even with those features, they'd still be merely temporary fixes, as the underlying raster performance of the game can still drop into the 20s or even teens on the most powerful systems players can get their hands on today. And this has yet another detrimental effect on attracting new players whose, again, expectations are much higher than they were just a couple of years ago. I saw countless complaints in my new player guide about low FPS performance and how it's just unacceptable. So further enhancements and development on Vulkan to bring the frame rates higher, as well as introducing the latest variations on AI enhancing techniques, would make Star Citizen much more performant. This should also extend to things like trash cleanup, which is clearly affecting the game's performance server side and client side, as pointed out by Midnight Wolf SDJ, which
That's such a tough one, though. Especially with the direction they want to take the game going forward, is our ships are no longer going to explode, so they're not going to be left in pieces like he was showing. Our ships are going to be left there for us to recover. And they should be left there for a while, maybe permanently or until claimed or something. And then there's the other aspect of it of, I don't know how many of you are out there, raise your hand in the Twitch chat or the comment section if I want to go around and salvage ships like that. I don't like the idea that I have to take a mission to salvage some spawned in ship. I love the idea of salvaging somebody's ship. Right? Like, that's something that I've always really wanted to dive into, and the game has never really supported that in a super good way yet. And they're getting there. They made some law changes that let us pull things out and move stuff around a little bit, but not as much. And then they definitely took it away with 4.0 around the pricing of components when you take them off of ships.
Just beyond the performance, also makes the game look a lot more visually, well, messed up. It looks like there's just trash laying everywhere, and it would be much more visually consistent if there was targeted cleanups of where players are leaving the most amount of garbage.
I would love to see the idea of it creating a mission to clean up this area, and I'm just allowed to. Right? That would be amazing. CIG has always said they would take it to realism and then dial it to the fun. And is CIG God? Right? CIG isn't all-knowing and a genius. Clearly they are not, because they have consistently fallen flat on their face with everything that they've tried to do in terms of these type of things. I disagree with that mentality entirely. I disagree with that mentality. I think the reason they are in the boat that they are in, having to let people go, not making enough money, focusing on money more than actually making a game, is because they focused on making money than actually making a game, and focused on realism than fun. I think they've made countless mistakes in that regard, and that's why we are where we are.
Stared at a pile of medical smocks or bottles and said, gee, the game is so much more immersive for all this garbage. Beyond that, there's also room for iteration on existing systems. One of the big ones cited by players like Raven9 Line is the current flight model. While opinions diverge on how to solve it, the consensus amongst a lot of players is that it's falling short in delivering a consistently fun experience.
Yep.
My take on it is that the current balance creates unexpected and sometimes frustrating outcomes, such as a racing ship like the M50 handily taking down a military spec F-7A Mark II regularly in larger fleet engagements. Single fighters solo killing a manned gunship like the Hammerhead can also sometimes happen. This issue is maybe one of the most complex ones to solve though, as there are many contributing factors to balance like weapon damage, ship health, component attributes, space versus atmospheric performance, and
we're making excuses for the obvious overdoing it. On the literally making the point of having all this realism makes it very difficult to balance and almost impossible to make fun.
Yet to be introduced systems like ship armor, weapon damages, and engineering gameplay.
How much is this ship? How much did somebody spend on this thing?
list honestly just goes on, and these issues can't and won't be solved overnight, but it still requires continuous iteration to get there so that we can test which solutions work and which don't. The same could be said for ground combat gameplay. There's little differentiation right now between different armor types and weapons, leading to most to just go for heavy armor and an FS9 LMG as the best options for pretty much every situation. Some of this could come down though to having more tech features introduced, like FPS scanning, which could, for example, create scenarios where heavy armor generates a bigger signature than light armor, allowing you to be more stealthy by playing with light armor. But it's just one possibility, and there seems to be a lot to explore here.
I find that to be such a weird statement for him to make when they laid out their plans for armor. It's almost like, Morph, I'm sorry, just giving you feedback on this specific thing, if you ever do happen to watch this, it's almost like you made your comment the solution to the problem, but they have already laid out the exact same solution to that problem. Perfect. Like Morph just popped in. The ammo comment. Yeah, you're coming at the worst time. The only time I've really had feedback for you as like how you commented.
Light armor allowing you to be more stealthy by playing with light armor. But it's just one possibility, and there seems to be a lot to explore here.
It was already stated at CitizenCon, right? So maybe I'm misunderstanding the way you're saying it, but it almost makes it like this is my idea for what they should do, but they've already explained what they're going to do, and it's exactly that. So I was a little confused. Why not highlight that's what they're doing, right? Indeed, pretty much. Oh, so you're stating what other people want. Okay. Nitpicking? Call it what you want, dude. I don't care.
Moving beyond fixing and polishing, though, there's still a lot of possibility for how the game could be improved by adding more content on the back of the existing framework of the game. The most commonly suggested new content from players like A Child of Bodom and Minmul is to add new missions alongside narratively driven questlines. It seems pretty obvious when you think about it. Well, the library of missions has definitely grown over.
Oh my god, I want no missions. I want literally 0 missions designed. I want so much more focus on sandbox tools. I can care less if they ever deliver another mission again.
The years, they remain sparse in diversity and quantity. The rewards also need to be examined and should extend beyond just a cash incentive, with interesting, rare, and perhaps even unique loot being possible to obtain by doing them. With Pyro more than
like, how are we missing just the simplest thing where the enemies during the missions have a different loot pool where they have the ability to possibly drop items on their suits, right? Like that are like we're so close. Like we have contested zones are the first step of showing how positively they got feedback from that. I think there was some negative of, well, I can't do contested zones, so I want those things. I think that's easily solved by having a marketplace, but players that are into PvP don't want to do what Morph is doing on screen right now, most likely, because it takes time, it takes away from them PvPing, so on and so forth. So whatever Morph is earning in this mission, based on the feedback he's giving, is like the idea. Well, I don't mean easily implemented, but it is an already thought out. You don't have to come up with the design for a marketplace, is what I mean, DJ. That's what I mean by easily. It's a solution that already exists out in the world. When I mean easily, I mean we don't have to go to the drawing board like CIG loves to do, right? So the idea here is those things already exist. Loot pools in video games on certain enemies already exists, and farming those enemies for the things that you want already exists. These are ideas that have existed for many a year, and CIG not utilizing it at all is a huge giant whiff.
Doubling the play space and server meshing, more than quadrupling the server's player count, there also needs to be a greater increase in mission location variety. The current limited number of locations means that oftentimes duplicate missions get piled up on top of each other, causing them to fail or complete unpredictably due to multiple players at the same location trying to complete similar objectives.
I think he's going to touch on the next thing. If he doesn't, I'll get to it.
The way these missions interact with the universe is also another interesting aspect.
He doesn't. So their solution to this problem was to slow down the pace in which you received missions to do. That was yesterday's PTU. Was to not deliver you missions, so you have to wait for the content that you are doing.
To explore as content is expanded. Introducing hauling missions that take players between Stanton and Pyro, for example, could be a more lucrative contract that balances risk versus reward. Player-triggered missions like the simple Comare and Security Post Correa ones could be expanded and explored further as they relate to different factions. Attacking an outpost at the behest of one faction could, for example, trigger a defense mission for the defending faction. Regardless of what's chosen, players like Stratobrick and Asgunare, sorry if I'm butchering your name, think that this should go hand in hand with further leveraging of the reputation system, enhancing a sense of player progression. Introducing in-game rewards like titles or unique cosmetics for building a rep with a faction could give an even greater depth of purpose to gameplay.
Let's see, did he actually get this to work? I've yet to get one of these missions to work.
It need not even be that complicated. One can imagine higher reputation missions taking players to locations where there are better loot spawns, with perhaps
Okay.
even a hangar that gives a ship at the higher levels. Eventually,
You know who would have gotten it to work? Burks. I bet you Burks completes these missions every time he tries.
voice-acted mission givers and more complex NPC encounters would greatly enhance a sense of immersion in the universe as you play through each of these missions. On the subject of NPCs, numerous backers also commented and voiced a desire to see more NPC activity in the verse. Once upon a time, a vision for a game where there were more NPCs than players doing the exact kind of thing that we are was shared by Chris Roberts. Today, NPC encounters we frequently have are just at mission locations or landing zones where they feel static and disconnected. New voice lines were added in 4.0 for chatter, but imagine how alive the game would feel if NPC ships could be seen coming and going from landing zones, outposts.
What if you could hail them and there was options to talk to them? And random, not so random responses. No other game's ever done that? No. Ever. I mean, Wing Commander did it. Right? Literal Wing Commander did it. You do not need AI to do this either. Like, games have done it for many, many years. You could potentially argue that you need AI to make it as natural or have as many responses as possible, but you don't need that, right? But yeah, it's
Space stations or even jump points. Imagine how that would change the gameplay for every loop in the game. It's not uncommon to see this in other MMOs, so why not Star Citizen? And as a bonus to adding more locations for these missions, it would unlock the possibility of bringing players to incredible vistas.
Every time we do, I kind of want to play Starfield right now. I know it's not a good video game, but little things like that are fun.
Scattered around the universe.
I feel like there's little bits of fun in other games, and I end up still playing this. Why do I do this? It's so fun to stream this game, but it is so much more fun to play other games.
Tons of moons and planets that are just rich with places to see that players won't interact with because there's no gameplay driving them to the surface to experience it. So giving them some meaningful gameplay to drive them to those locations could make the world feel a lot.
Play X4. X4 is literally on the list. I'm waiting for the beta to go into their live build because it's got the new flight model from Pritchett.
Bigger than it does right now, as sometimes given the limited locations, it can feel vastly smaller than it actually is. But if we were to look at the most extreme example of new content that they could add, it would be new star systems. But I'm hesitant to say that that's any kind of priority because without any of the other systems I've talked about, they might just feel empty if they...
You need, not Morph, but CIG needs to prove that they're able to take the two that we have now, one lawful, one unlawful, have them connected in a logical and fun and enjoyable way economically and reputationally and competitively. right? Those three things need to be proven out before you even think about delivering another star system, in my opinion. I would hate for the devs to take any time developing a system that has no idea what it needs to be. I think they really need to sit down and take the time and dial in the interactions between these two. How ridiculous is it that the only difference between Stanton and Pyro is like 5 commodities, and there's very little I go here to get these things and I go over there to sell them or something. Like there's just the they're so loosely connected right now. They basically just go Stanton and Red Stanton in a lot of ways. Like there's not that much that the difference is no crime statting in Pyro, but it's just not making sense. Hey Cutlet.
They
What's
don't
up, dude?
feel full and rich with life. And this leads me to my concern with what's been said about the direction in 2025. Playability and content are really important to filling out what's already there. But the problem
Can they even
still
do it,
remains
though?
that Star Citizen consists of isolated islands of content and features. Fixing what's there will only serve to further highlight the lack of depth and purpose in what we do. For example,
1 billion% true. If they take all the time and stop and fix the game now, all you're going to realize is how boring it is.
why do we mine, salvage, bounty hunt, or perform any action in the game other than for just monetary reward or for the immersion of the experience? Connecting loops through tech features like base building and crafting still needs to be a goal in 2025, even if the tech features introduced are only basic at first. I can see, for example, creating a crafting system at
I want to go all the way back to the beginning and server performance and AI. I don't, there's no like, or very little challenges in the game where you improve your weapons, your armor, your ship, your shields, or the weapons on your ship, where you may run up to a foe, a certain type of mission that is impossible for you to complete unless you go through the game's progression systems and improve something that allows you to complete that. Like, I played the game, I earned this reward that opened up a new set of gameplay for myself. And I think there's, like, with the advent of server meshing and 30 FPS servers consistently, is you can see yourself run up to that wall and hit it and then go, okay, well, that's my limit for now. And then you gear up and you grow and you get better in the game. And then boom. I don't mean Ubisoft NPC level bullet sponges. I mean challenging AI that move in a way that you're not used to, and improving the fire rate or muzzle velocity on your weapons and doing more damage, things like that as well. So when you do hit, you are able to kill them. Or I don't know. I should give examples because of what DJ just said. Is we do not want bullet sponges, right? Although we do have bullet sponges with the security post Correa bosses and Hurston bosses as well. So maybe some bullet sponging, but not to the extent of Ubisoft or anything like that. So I don't know. I feel like that would be such a win for you to like fleet composition. Like, remember we saw the worm, something like that, right? The worm is a really good example of, I can't really go to the worm solo and complete it, hopefully. And I need to bring my friends first, but second, my friends in a composition of different ships that excel at some things and don't at others. I would love to just see that. And the idea of the tank, the healer, that kind of Yeah, that kind of thing in a game like this. Obviously, I don't see there being a healer necessarily in a space game like this, but I think you get the point that I'm trying to make, and I think that would be such a win, and that ties in reputation, economy, progression, all those things.
NPC stations where players input a recipe of materials and receive a crafted item with enhanced stats depending on the material's quality. Just doing something simple like this would connect a bunch of loops together, like mining, salvage, hauling, and combat,
Engineers the
as
healer,
players
yeah.
work together to find and hold the best material sources and bring them to stations to craft better components and get an advantage over others. This approach would also give CI
Yeah, see, the get advantage over others, I think, is what the major part of the community doesn't want. I think the larger part of the community is not interested in PvP. They're interested in just kind of doing their thing, and they're going to need to be able to see tangible progression within the crafting and reputation systems in order to engage with them in their own style of gameplay, right? And I think where the focus lied from CitizenCon was very much on Pyro has the best material, and there's this massive PvP mechanic around the owning of stations and the shields and things like that they explained. And what I hope they go through in the next year is explain how those same mechanics can apply to players who like mining or who like salvaging or who like PvE combat, right?
time to develop a wealth of recipes and figure out balance well before it connects with the more complex systems of base building and space station building. But what gets talked about even less, that still needs a great amount of effort on CIG's part, is to continue developing player-facing communication systems that bridge these different systems and islands of content together in a way that players can understand that they exist and know what their relationships are.
What
I mean is, for example, a market app to direct players to find basic items in the verse. Also, giving players a way to sell looted items for profit. A trader app in the Mobiglass to help understand commodity prices and plan trading routes without having to rely on clunky third-party workarounds. Robust and complete community tools to help us better organize and play together with things like org coffers and org entities like ships. A more complete
Yeah, I think even the stuff that they showed around orgs, while cool, was lacking.
scanning system for ships and players on the ground to help players identify points of interest, items of interest, trading lanes, hostile ships and locations with interesting counter.
Mike, when you say if they fixed the game it'd be boring, what do you mean by that exactly? How is this difficult? I have no idea, but the game, there is no game. So if they fixed all the bugs, it would just, you would recognize that there's no progression system, no economy, no challenging experiences outside of just make the ship bigger. It would be boring, right? They need to develop the game as on top of fixing it.
Gameplay connected to a more complete map system that shows the surface topography of planets and moons.
But those are the things that would get fixed. No.
Called Ship Loadout Manager to help us better understand what we can equip to our ship and understand what stats that they have so that we know what's better than what and what has a different kind of trade-off, rather than relying on third-party things like Urkel to help us figure out ship fitting, which should just be something that we could do in-game. Look, what it really comes down to is that Star Citizen has a lot of complex systems and they have a lot of plans for even more complex relationships, but if it's not being communicated what's happening, it can just come off as a bug or something that players will never see or know that they can interact with.
That's where I got to come in and go, but it's an alpha, and go, they need to come up with the game's design first of all those systems. So there needs to be a I agree completely, but the UI needs to be incredibly basic and easy to adjust on the fly, like just developer UI during the main part of that first coming into the game. Market app, 100%. Communications, all that stuff. Just keep it fucking simple and easy to change on the fly. Do not spend all this time committing to making it look good, because you're going to have to change it anyway, because you always have to change it because you never made the game in the first place.
That's kind of always been the problem with Star Citizen. And I think advertising that they're working on these more ambitious
This
features will
diegetic
keep people
bullshit all
interested
the
in the
time.
game in the short term. Fixing bugs and optimizing is definitely necessary, but it can't alone drive continued interest in the game. Ambition is what drives excitement, which can be infectious and can be the best kind of organic marketing, especially when goals are achieved.
Yeah, I mean, let's go all the way back to that, in my opinion, just absolutely rude and idiotic comment that somebody made about Morph, is I miss the old Morph, essentially, is what he said. It's because excitement is infectious, right? And how can you be excited however many years it's been, right? You can't be. And now it's like, hey, I want to be excited again. Make me excited again. That's where I'm at. You have the ability to get me excited again. And I think everyone's starting to feel that we are on the cusp of you actually have the ability to make me excited again. Go out there and do it.
Despite my concerns though, going into 2025, I'm feeling very positive about the year ahead. While 4.0 came out later than hoped, CNG still put it out and
read the comments. Majority of the comments think even this video is way too positive. You're never like, don't read the comments, Morph. Like, that's just where we're at now. Because they just put all of us in a box. We are who we are in their mind, and it's never going to change. I can turn into the happiest, most go-lucky person, and I will forever be who I am in their mind.
And what
was
essentially a live environment over the holidays, yielding, I'm sure, a trove of data to leverage for rapid fixes, which is exactly what we're starting to see just right in the first week since they've been back. The year is starting then strong with a functioning form of server meshing, giving the devs a great foundation to build on leading up to the first major release in this year's Q1 release. I look forward then to when they finally communicate what their vision is for the next series of patches in more concrete terms. Summarizing your posts has been a monumentally difficult task, as nearly everything you guys said was completely reasonable and valid. So if something you mentioned didn't get included here, I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to include every single thing. I needed to get this video out at some point, and it definitely didn't help that one of my hard drives died this week, losing half of my footage. Still, I think that this has been a really helpful exercise, and I want to continue here in the video's comment section where you guys can help fill in some of the gaps that I left. So let me know what your thoughts are down below, and as always,
you had to read
if you
the
like
comments
this video,
this time.
you know what to do. Hope to see you in the next one.
That was good. Really good video, Morph, and yeah, I don't think I think it was well balanced, not negative or positive, just doing exactly what you intended to do, which is highlight their comments, and you did. But yeah, I think this year is such a I don't think it's the year. I don't think it's a turning point. I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's just going to be so interesting to see what they do and see how they react to everything that happened this year. Yeah, it's literally was not his opinion in the video. It was just him highlighting comments. But people will they don't get it. And even I didn't get it at some point. So I mean, maybe that's some feedback too. Is it just comes down to what will this year be, and when will we see the roadmap? What's the plans? What are you going to do this year? And I don't want to know the plans like Jared did last year, 6 months ahead of time, that you're obviously not going to deliver, that we all called you out for, and you got what you deserved. I want to see the what's next in 4.1. What is our main focus there, and what are we, and is your intention to deliver this feature in not just a tier 0 state or get it out there and gather feedback state, but in a playable, enjoyable, and in a way that is starting to interconnect with other systems. You know, whatever those things are, that's what I'm looking for, is start to grab on. All these systems starting to grab onto each other. I don't expect it to just all happen in one patch. I expect it to happen very slowly, but I need to see it start to happen. And I think we got a little tiny bit of that in 4.0 with contested zones and components and things like that, but we need a whole lot more of that coming this year. And yeah, another great video, Morph, as always, and stop reading the comments. In this case, you had to, but God, they're brutal.